Welcome to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast. So thanks for joining us today. This is a first for us. We are filming live from one of the finest National Trust gardens, Stourhead, on the beautiful Wiltshire Somerset border. I'm with Sam Peters of Planted, and also broadcaster, writer, architect, designer, and global biophilic design specialist, Oliver Heath. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having us, Vanessa.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And as I said, we were going to be streaming live actually from the gardens, but Wi-Fi and internet connectivity is playing up. So they are in a nice little office there with a picture of Stourhead behind them. So people on YouTube will be able to see that for that moment. I will also intersperse pictures that you will have taken after the event. But you're here today to talk about the event that you're going to be holding there. You held a fantastic event, which I attended as well, Planted Cities, last September at King's Cross in London. And you'll be delivering a new event in this beautiful part of the countryside where you are now. And it's going to bring together design-led businesses, brands, organisations, and have place, nature and sustainability at their core. I'm not going to talk about that. That's what you guys are here for. So many thanks for joining us. And maybe, Oliver, you could start by kind of explaining where Stourhead is and what it is. I understand it's got lovely landscape gardens, but maybe you could just kind of like set the scene for our podcast listeners, for instance.
Sure, yeah. So we're calling you from Stourhead House and Gardens, just outside Tisbury in the West Country. And it's a beautiful National Trust classical house with a stunning series of gardens. And basically, we're going to be inhabiting the house and the gardens for Planted.
Indeed, yeah.
Coming up in early May.
April the 30th to May the 2nd.
Yeah.
Over the first bank holiday weekend. And yeah, we've been absolutely blessed to be partnering with the National Trust, who've invited us here to Stourhead to activate the space. And Oliver will be here alongside myself and most of the team indeed from the London event, which you just referred to, Vanessa. And we just saw a really amazing opportunity to run an event in a more rural setting, as Oliver described. And we're really excited about it.
I mean, that said, it's a really beautiful series of spaces. So rather than just one big open space, there are some beautiful walled gardens. We were supposed to be giving you this call from some of the stunning glass houses that are here. So there's a series of kind of walled gardens. There's kind of different courtyards. We're going to be doing installations. So we've just been looking around, doing a little site visit and kind of planning out some of the things. It's just such a beautiful series of spaces. So it'll be, I think, a really wonderful day out, not just to come and visit the house and the gardens, but also to hear from thought leaders, come and see some of the kind of people leading the way in sustainable design and well-being in the furniture industry. So it's going to be really, really exciting. And just coming to this space is amazing. Some beautiful trees here, like 600-year-old sweet chestnut
trees. Yeah. And adding to the event from King's Cross, you might remember our Sleeping in Nature installation, Vanessa, which we built we commissioned a bespoke mobile off-grid cabin for our friends at Out of the Valley, who built that for us and designed just an absolutely beautifully simple mobile cabin. So that cabin's has wintered down in Tisbury, and that'll be very much making an appearance as our mobile TV studio. So we're going to be filming the talks program live from the mobile cabin, and Oliver will be leading those talks along with myself, and it's with talks around Save Our Soil. So very much looking into the importance of looking after the land for farming, for food and for nature, and the role that design can play in designing spaces which are much more sympathetic and empathetic to nature and biodiversity and wildlife. So we're going to have some fantastic speakers, and really looking forward to running those talks with Oliver again.
Because it's at the National Trust property, presumably anybody who's interested in gardens or nature or just their, just the built environment, I should imagine as well, sort of be interesting to come. And then also the difference.
I guess getting to the sharper end of it, the kind of the survival of the human race, how we survive from the soils and the kind of way of manufacturing and creating food and basic resources and how we treat that, the intersection between sustainability and well-being.
And I think the exciting part from our perspective, Vanessa, as well, in terms of that National Trust audience as well, I think perhaps the planted audience in London may have looked a little bit different to a typical National Trust audience, but where the common ground lies is absolutely an interest in nature and looking after the environment and trying to find solutions to the climate emergency that Oliver just referred to. And that's a really exciting bringing together of those two audiences. And there's no question in this area where we are in Stourhead, you've got places like Bruton, you've got Frome, you've got Tisbury, you've got Glastonbury. It's a really interesting and established creative community down here, and Stourhead sits really beautifully in the middle of that space, and that just makes for a really exciting mix of people to come, and I totally agree with Oliver. It's going to be an event where there's going to be something for everyone here.
And in terms of talks, what sort of things are you going to be covering?
Yeah, so as I say, it's around Save Our Soil. So we're going to be looking at things from, literally what is the land beneath our feet? What is soil? Why is it so important? Why should we protect it? What does it give us? What does it give the planet? What can we store in it? Conversations around carbon capture, biodiversity, into, what are the farming processes of the future? What does farming look like in the future? How are we going to how can farmers be part of a huge solution here? What things like regenerative farming, which people will have looked at and probably understood a lot as a result of Isabella Tree's seminal work, Wilding, looking at, I know Oliver's really excited about, and I am as well, the designing for nature, so hyper-local nature design, which Oliver, you might want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, so what we're seeing increasingly are architects and designers really starting to look at local vernacular materials and the role they play in mitigating embedded carbon, and also the beauty and kind of sense of place that those bring. So we're going to be speaking with some kind of leading architectural and interior designers, looking at how we can influence the sustainability of spaces by looking around us, showcasing some of the works of the likes of Duncan Baker Brown, companies called Local Resources, companies that specialize in kind of bringing local materials to create a flavor and quality of local areas, and essentially bringing forward that idea that vernacular design still has really essential role to play in contemporary urban spaces.
And so that will be the day one talks, Vanessa, and then day two on the Sunday we're going to be talking about things like community farming, so farming for everyone. How do we integrate the community into farming practices? We've never farmed more land in the UK, but with fewer people. So, how do we actually unpick that, unhealthy combination where we can actually bring more people into, employ more people, and actually farm land more sympathetically and in conjunction with communities. And then also, we are what we eat. So again, looking at the role the soil plays in the food that we eat, some of the harmful practices, and how we perhaps move to a more organic-based diet where we're not destroying the planet at the same time as we're taking from the land. And then looking at things around wildlife gardening, which is something that's really personal and close to my heart. How do we design gardens which are empathetic with nature and which enable nature to live and flourish and regenerate and rejuvenate, and all those great things that we stand for at Planted.
And also looking at that sort of intersection between the role that kind of rural and urban farming plays, and asking the question of what role does that sort of urban farming play in the delivery of the food that we're going to need to eat into the future, and the many technologies that kind of can contribute to it.
Yeah, and all the common ground that there is between producers in the cities and in the countryside as well. Like where, we've got really the issue we've got is big supermarkets drilling down on farmers' margins, and how do we work together to kind of ensure that we can provide food from local sources for local people, rather than flying all our food all over the world with all the damaging effects that has. So loads and loads of really interesting topics that I think people find really relevant today, and probably never more important than right now to be talking about these things.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with you. And it sounds like it's going to be a beautiful location, really inspiring series of talks. And, you know, if people who are kind of sitting on the fence, I think, about whether things are accessible, being able to make a different choice. I think when you see it in the round and you experience something of such beauty, because obviously I saw that thing you did at Planted, it was really inspiring. It was very open, very accessible. Really, you know, the debates that you had as well, they were incredibly engaging. You know, some people I spoke to afterwards, you know, they said their minds had changed. They realized, actually, hang on a minute, I can make a different choice. Like, for instance, like you say, looking at local artisans, you know, can they make my table instead of me going and buying one? Or, you know, can I upcycle something? Can I work with some other people? So there's all different ways of doing it. And urban farming, I think, is a brilliant thing. And I think being able to go, if you're National Trust type member, and if you're not a National Trust member, I presume you can buy a ticket on the day, can you, to just to go along to your talks?
Yeah, so it's free to attend for everyone. The event is free to attend. So if you're a National Trust member, of course you can come. It's a National Trust site. We're just there's a ticketed garden area which obviously National Trust members would have free access to. If you're visiting Planted and you wanted to access those gardens, you would have to pay the normal day fee. But the actual Planted Country event is sitting outside that, so it's a free to attend event. So if whether you're a National Trust member or not, you're more than welcome to come. It's definitely not an exclusive event in that regard. We're very much looking to include and incorporate everyone. And again, talking about the National Trust and why we see them as such a great partner, they talk a lot about access to nature to everyone, for everyone, for all time. And that's, you know, absolutely what Planted stands for, is enabling access to nature and reconnecting people and spaces with nature. And we want to work with partners who share those values, and that's absolutely something that we stand for.
For me, Planted embodies all of those ideas and the ethos that I've been working towards throughout my professional life. These ideas of biophilic design and the importance of strengthening the connection to nature. Many of us have realized over lockdown that nature is fundamental to supporting our well-being. And I think now, as we move out of it, we're realizing the dual benefit, not just for our well-being, but also the well-being of the planet, how it's essential that if we strengthen that connection to nature, there are benefits for the way that we live in cities, the resilience that it can bring to the spaces that we live in, but also how it can support our physical, mental, and social well-being. And so I'm so delighted to be working with Planted and to be investigating the many ways that this can start to be engaged with in our lives, whether that's living in rural areas or into urban areas. Nature plays such a fundamental role in how we're going to shape happier, healthier, more resilient futures.
Planted Country is going to be held at Stourhead from April the 30th to May the 2nd, the first bank holiday weekend in May. And it's a free to attend event for National Trust members and for indeed anybody who wants to come. If you love nature, you love design, you love good food, and you love beautiful spaces, then come to Planted. You're going to love it.
Thank you for listening to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast.